Not that long ago, the idea of Jaguar doing a compact SUV was as ludicrous as the idea of a cricketer or a light entertainer from the north getting a job on Top Gear.
Please tell me this is not real.
Yes, it is.
Oh, that is shot.
But that was then, and this is now.
It's called the E-Pace, and it really is small.
Really small.
We'll come back to the looks. First of all, why was it so inevitable that Jaguar would make this car?
Firstly, and mainly, it's because the premium compact crossover segment is a rapidly expanding one, both in terms of consumer sales and vehicle choice. And it is, of course, dominated by
the Germans.
But also because a smallish and sensibly priced Jaguar SUV will bring in a whole bunch of shiny new customers to the brand. You know, the marketing dream, sexy young family buyers with a bit of for whom an F-Pace is too big and a Jag Saloon too stuffy. They call them conquest customers. There's nothing funny about that.
Get ready to dance with swords. Let us gingerly touch our tips.
More money for Jaguar, basically. But not more problems, because handily, Jaguar Land Rover already has a couple of smallish SUV type things in its brochures.
namely this one and this one.
And what do you know, the same chassis that underpins those underpins this too.
That means Jaguar can develop it relatively cheaply using components and underneath bits from those cars.
Which is why a lot of what you see here will look alarmingly familiar if you've been in any mid-range Jaguar or Land Rover product of late. But that's not what's weird about the E-Pace. What's weird about the E-Pace is
the look of the thing. I can't quite get my head around whether it's pretty or not. I mean, it obviously is stylish for an SUV type thing, but for some reason I can't quite remove the image from my head of an F-Type that's gone to some backstreet surgeon in Eastern Europe and asked for the cheapest injections that they do.
The real-life Hulk.
My body attracts women very much.
There's just something about it that seems proportionally challenging. Just to give you an idea, this is of course a 5-door, 5-seat car, but it's actually shorter than an F-Type and thinner, and the wheelbase is only marginally longer.
so that awful thing that you sometimes read about car X being like car Y on stilts is sort of a bit true here. Maybe not.
Anyways, upshot is you would expect this to be tiny inside, what with its dimensional similarities to the 2-seat F-Type, but not the case. I mean, it can be a bit tight for leg space, especially if the people in the front are tall, but there's plenty of headroom and it just about passes as a family car. Boot's a bit small if you compare it by volume to some of the other stuff in the same class, but even then there's no actual problem with it. Split folding rear bench, nice high loading floor that's flat, hidey holes, nets, hooks, no complaints.
And up front here, no practicality complaints either. Jaguar Land Rover's cabin design and its selection of identikit parts may be tiresome to somebody like me who's driven all the stuff, but taken in isolation, it's nice. Touchscreen's a proper widescreen, it's big and clear and it works quite intuitively. It's mostly well built.
It does creak a bit when you take an especially aggressive corner. Well, mine did anyway.
And I can't believe I'm actually about to say this, but it's got the most interesting door pockets I think I've ever seen. I've got sections. And something else that I noticed, well, actually it was my daughter. These two little cats here right at the corner of the windscreen, which is a really nice allusion to the car, big cat, small cat. So I looked around to see if there's anything else in the cabin that was interesting, and it turns out that if you look closely, this little pad here behind the gear lever for you to put your phone on or whatever, it is monogrammed with a Jaguar print pattern.
However, none of that quite makes up for the overarching feeling that Jaguar is starting again to get left behind in the whole interior design epoch. Like if you compare it to the new Audi Q3, which is all techy and screeny, then the E-Pace starts to look a bit walnut and leather.
Whatever, you'll either like it or not. And so in the timeless words of this very popular American police training video,
so we established earlier that this has more than a hint of F-Type about it. You can see it in the lights and the shoulders over the rear wheels and just generally the proportionality of it. Now the thing is, that aesthetic goes hand in hand with a certain dynamic expectation,
which this car categorically does not meet, mostly. Now, of course, it would be idiotic to compare this to an F-Type in a like-for-like fashion. So just to be clear, I'm not doing that. And the remit of this car, tall, spacious family transport, means that it does have to have a modicum of comfort. But if you drive a Porsche Macan or even a Peugeot 3008, those two cars demonstrate that being high up and being properly dynamically accomplished aren't necessarily mutually exclusive characteristics. This car really is neither one thing nor the other. So the ride quality borders on poor, especially at lower speeds and on less than smooth roads. But because the E-Pace has a necessarily significant amount of suspension travel, the body control's not that good either, so when you take corners, it rolls quite a lot and there isn't really much sense of what is going on, although it does grip well. Upshot is, it's not sporty like a Macan or comfy like a Range Rover. Now, I know it's not supposed to be either of those cars, but it is supposed to blend their characteristics in a convincing way.
Does that mean it's awful to drive?
No, it isn't actually. It's not bad. It's not bad at all. There's a weight and there's a directness to the steering, and like I said before, it does grip well. And it's brilliantly settled on the motorway because of the way it's set up. It's dead smooth. Incidentally, the design of the backside also makes rear visibility quite poor because it's got quite a shallow screen and really thick C-pillars. So you might find this thing a bit irritating to do reverse parking in.
And there's another problem.
The engine does not befit a 50 grand car.
Yep, that's 50 grand. And in fact, that car out there, with its panoramic roof, its telly, it's got a telly, and its paint, 58 grand.
And yet it's packing a 4-cylinder engine, which means it sounds like this. Oh, that's just unpleasant. You don't spend 50 grand on a car for it to sound like a Kia, but just louder.
Petrol or diesel, Jaguar's 4-cylinder engines just never seem that inspirational. Sadly, they're what you're stuck with if you want an E-Pace. There are only two engines really, 2 litre, 4-cylinder, both with a turbocharger. Diesel called D and the petrol called P. But you get a variety of power outputs, as you can see here. In the cheap seats, there's a 150 horsepower diesel with a manual gearbox and front wheel drive, or you can go all the way up to
this one, the 50 grand one. Very few will buy this one, and that's really no great loss to the automotive kingdom. Now, it does feel punchy, this one, but that's because it's been set up to give you all of its torque, all 400 M&Ms.
My name is Sadie.
At just 1500 RPM, but in a way that flatters to deceive, and it makes it feel a bit clumsy because what you find is when you pull away it sort of rockets off and then runs out of steam quite quickly and just descends into the din that I played you earlier.
Jag's 9-speed auto is good though, silky like a packet of healthy tabs from the 80s.
It's time you switched to Silk Cut, Britain's best-selling low-tar cigarette in 1983.
And you can, of course, get 4-wheel drive, but to be honest, we would suggest that in the absence of a proper rear-wheel drive Jaguar-type setup, you might as well save a bit of fuel, a bit of weight, and get the front-wheel drive one. Like, if you go full fat E-Pace, you're looking at 50 grand and 30 miles per gallon. While at the other end of the scale, you reverse that to 30 grand and 50 miles per gallon.
And yes, it'll sound nasty and diesel-y and it'll be depressingly slow, but you'll still have the same fancy Jag for other people to see you in, basically.
Well equipped too. Now we're running out of time, so I won't get bogged down in a whole equipment thing. All you really want to do is paint it a nice colour and get an automatic gearbox. Bosch. Oh, and speaking of Bosch, 5-star Euro NCAP rating. Thanks a lot.
You know, for all I've spent the last however many minutes slagging this thing off, I have to say that I do like this car. It's the sort of car that I would buy with my own money against my better judgment. Like, the BMW stuff is much better to drive, and the Volvo XC40 is just more practical and more comfortable and a better family car. And the new Audi Q3's interior is much better than this. And for 50 grand, I'd want the engine from the GLA 45 AMG.
And Jaguar's reliability record is hardly flawless. The reasons not to buy one go on and on. Point was I making again? Oh yes, I like this car. It's like the Arga of the premium compact crossover segment. Even though you know other ovens will be much better, much more efficient, cheaper, and a lot easier to live with, you'll still want to buy an Arga because it's cool and because people will look at your Arga and go, ooh, you've got an Arga, well done. There you go, thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and go over to HJ for a more fulsome review of the E-Pace. Check out our other reviews, tell your friends, and we'll see you next week. Bye!